Do I need this? Okay. I work with Code for Australia, and I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer, or as everybody likes to think of me, as the Chief of Getting Things Done Officer. So I basically watch over the programs that Code for Australia runs, make sure nobody's starting fires, nobody gets lost in the woods. Out of interest, who here has heard of Code for Australia? Wonderful. The rest of you, please go Google us and find out more. I do have one recruitment pitch. We've just launched Code for Victoria. We're looking for 9 women who work in technology and design. We're putting together 3 teams of 3, all female, to work in government for 6 months starting in June. Go check out our website and let your good women know about it. Okay. First thing I'm going to do with regards to collaboration, I don't know if I have a lot of knowledge for you, but we'll see how we go for the next half hour. I'd like you to turn to the person next to you, and if you know them, turn to the person behind you until you find somebody you don't know. And if you're a bit of a scenester, mingle around. What I'd like you to do is, in pairs, for a couple of minutes, answer these questions. Who are you? Why are you here? And just very briefly, a current collaboration you're involved in, which you're excited about. It doesn't have to be work, it can be creative, it can be, I don't know, your family, could be your collaborative kind of enterprise. But yeah, just turn around, a couple of minutes, go. Okay, so why did I do that? So at the start, Rick mentioned that one of the aims of this is to get people who wouldn't otherwise converse with each other to converse with each other. So that's one example of what a conversation with somebody you wouldn't normally chat to might be like. So, collaboration. What the hell does that mean? This can go one of 2 ways. You guys can either sort of chat amongst yourself and agree on a definition, or I'll just tell you one and we'll go from there. And you just have to trust me and don't question me on it. Okay, so for the rest of the next half hour, when I say collaboration, I have a very specific definition. So collaboration involves 2 or more people collectively creating processes and outcomes that reflect the input of all contributors. So I know that's a little bit wordy, so I'm just going to explain it another way. So when I'm talking about collaboration, I'm talking specifically about when, as a group, you can't collaborate on your own, so there's one other person there. And as a group, you are collectively deciding what you're making as well as how you're going to be making together. Any questions on that? So it's sort of 2 bits. If these 2 things are not there, I'm going to suggest that what is going on is not collaboration. Great, no questions. So I'd like you to turn back to the person you were chatting to. Earlier, you talked about a collaboration you're excited about. So in light of that definition, reflect on whether is it actually a collaboration? So are you actually involved in both working out the thing you're making, like creating the thing you're making, and also how you're going to get there? Okay, out of curiosity, with reference to that definition, how many people here are in a collaboration? So that thing you said you're excited about, how many of you are in a collaboration? Cool. Excellent. Okay, so this model is called the 3 C's model. It's sort of obvious as to why. This is just one way of understanding your role in a collaboration. So we've spoken about like what is it you might be doing that might constitute collaboration. This model comes out of the work of Mark Elliott, who runs a consulting firm called CollabForge here in Melbourne. And essentially it describes the 3 places or the 3 spots you can be in relation to something that's being created. So what's really useful about this is it says nothing about the job you're actually doing. All it talks about is where you are, whatever your skill is that you're bringing to the project or the idea. What this describes is how close you are to the making. So I'll go through and explain each of these. Okay, In any group, in any project, you're going to have a collaborative core. This is generally made up of about 1% of everybody who's involved. Your collaborative core are the people who are collaborating. So they're the people who are deciding what's being made as well as how you're going to go about making that thing. Then around them, you've got about 9% of people of the overall picture who are in your cooperating community. Now, your cooperating community are involved in making, but there's a bit more of a transactional relationship. So they will follow the processes that have been specified by the collaborative core. So the collaborative core is working out what we're making and how we're making it. And then your cooperating community are basically going to abide by those processes. And it's a bit more of a transactional relationship. And then there's an even bigger group of people known as a coordinated crowd who are like basically your fan base, your supporters. They love what you're doing. They'll advocate for what you are making, but they're not really involved in deciding how you get there or contributing to it. So an example of how this sort of shakes out. So if you think about a music scene, in a music scene, your collaborative core is kind of made up of your bands and of your promoters and the people right at the middle of which that scene is constituted. Your cooperating community could be people like your venues and your bloggers and your other people who are supporting your whatever that music scene is. And then you've got your punters. So you basically don't have a scene unless all of those particular groups of people are there. I think you may find the same. I mean, you've been involved in a few meetups and a few communities, but you end up with that sort of core group who are creating. And then you've got these other groups, bigger and bigger groups who are involved, but not as involved. So in relation to that collaboration you're excited about, again, I'd like you to chat to the person about where you are specifically sitting, knowing that all of those are okay. There's not one that's like better than the other. Are you right in the middle of it, working out? So those who raise your hands, I'm expecting you're right in the middle of it. Or are you in that kind of cooperating community where it's a bit more of a transactional, I don't mean transactional in a negative way, I just mean you don't really have a say in how things are being done, but you definitely are inputting to the thing that's being made? Or are you more in the fan base? You're like really the cheer squad that's kind of attending stuff and kind of driving it along. So yeah, have a chat about that. Slide has a few more words, but essentially what I was saying before. So again, when you're thinking about your collaboration or when you're thinking about projects that you're involved in, there are many roles. There's the technical role you play in creating the thing that's been created, and then there's also the proximity you have to the actual thing that's been created. So the main point I want to make here is you basically need all three of these. So there's no hierarchy. One of them is not more important than the other. They are all really necessary proximities from the thing that you're creating in order for that thing to be, as good as it can be. One other point with this particular model, which is quite useful to think about when you're wanting to establish new collaborations, is you generally start from the outside and work your way in. So generally the way one arrives in the collaborating core of something is that they've started off as followers and then they've kind of stepped a little bit closer and are contributing. That's that cooperating community, and then eventually they step in to that collaborative core. So again, for example, with the meetup and wanting a collaborative core around it, you'll probably find that the people who end up in there have sort of inched their way through those other layers first. It's generally quite unusual for strangers to step straight into a collaborative core space together, because it's a bit like you just met someone and then you move in, and that kind of just, I don't know, maybe that works for some people, but in generally, that tends not to happen where people will just meet and then instantly go into that collaborating core. So it takes a little bit of time to arrive at that point where there's high enough trust that you will both trust each other on the process and trust each other on the thing that you're creating. Any questions on that model or anything? Yes. So it's called the 3 Cs, and it comes out of the work that Mark Elliott did. He wrote a PhD on the mechanisms of collaboration, and in the PhD, there's like entire chapters dedicated to each one of these. And the reason he went through and differentiated these was to say that collaboration is a really specific thing. all these other things are what other people might call collaboration, but they're just a different sort of variety. You can find more info at a site called Epic Collaboration. Okay, now this is a complete experiment. I've never done this before. On your seats, there will be a green or a white bit of paper. I'm not sure how this will work, so let's see. So hopefully you have a pen or somebody near you has a pen. I'd like you to spend 3 minutes, 1 minute per question. Sorry, I've come completely unprepared with pens as well. I'd like you to answer these 3 questions, and what I'm after is just like one thought, and can you write legibly? Because I'll be either grabbing these off you or asking you to tweet them. So divide your page into 3 or somehow make a distinction. What was the most useful thing for you out of what I just covered? What would have made the last 20 minutes more productive? And what assumptions did you have coming in? So I'm just asking one thought for each of these. However you like dividing your paper, please write legibly. And this one's a quiet activity. So just... and when you look up, I'll know you're done. Okay. So as those papers are shuffling down, that's pretty much all I have to say on the key bits on collaboration. And basically, what we just went through then is what I'm proposing you would need to do whilst you're collaborating. So in any collaborative endeavour that you are in or want to be in or looking to start up, first, spend time asking, who are you and why are you here? So especially if you haven't worked with people a great deal before, make sure you're spending time asking that stuff up front. Secondly, clarify definitions. If you're wanting to do interdisciplinary kind of cross-teamy type stuff, and you want to be working with people you don't normally work with, I guarantee you're going to be talking in quite different languages. So although I kind of basically just told you what my definition for collaboration was, what I would be suggesting is in your collaboration, whatever the thing is that you're making, keep checking back on the language that you're using about how you're working together. Clarify roles in relation to what's been created. So again, this isn't about like who's going to be the developer, who's going to be the designer, who's going to be the whatever else. I'm talking about the definition of where you stand in proximity to the thing that's been created. So are you asking people, or is the invitation you're giving to people about being in the collaborative core, or is it okay if they're in that kind of transactional space? And that's totally fine. And also for yourself, where do you want to be? Like maybe you can't be right in the thick of it all the time. So instead think about where you can be, and it's okay to move between those different layers. Lastly, reflect and adjust. So those 3 questions I just posed to you, they are the basis of retrospectives that we do at Code for Australia. They're the basis of the one-on-one chats that we have with our staff, and they're the basis of the feedback that I get from my clients around facilitation stuff. So I'd invite you to kind of include a reflect and adjust process in your collaboration, and that those reflections that you're asking for are to make you aware of how you are in that collaboration, not about the technical stuff, but how you're behaving in that collaboration. And lastly, continuously pay attention to how you're working together, not just what you're working on, which is just everything I just said. Couple of side notes. Conflict is totally okay. If your collaboration has no conflict, it is pretty much dead and boring. And also, increased complexity means increased demands. So as you take on bigger things, be kind to yourself. The end.